elixir of life. I don't exactly have a script today, but I made a couple of notes. We were talking about Hollywood models yesterday, and that got me thinking. You know, they still use them, even though CGI is taken over a lot. But I was thinking about some of my favorite scenes in Hollywood, and some that were really good for the time, and some that were really bad. And I guess just to shake things up, I'm going to talk about one of the worst special effects movies that used models. And I think it was Airport 79, the Concorde, which was just a beyond ridiculous movie to begin with. But the special effects in it, even for the era, were just horrid. And the cheap pasting, the bad lighting, anyway. But and I think they may have just used kit models on that from the look of it. I don't know. So one movie that I saw when I was a kid, I imagine we've all seen it, that had incredible special effects, especially for being made in like 1969, was Ice Station Zebra. And all of us remember, I think, the footage of the MiGs. And even though as a kid I knew they were probably models, I was like, because remember, that was the first time I probably got a close look at what a MiG-21 was, actually moving. There were some imperfections in the green screening. One of the airplanes kind of warped a little bit in one scene and kind of faded out for a second in another, but still that was glowing. And of course they would have been flying an afterburner all that time. And then at some point suddenly the MiGs became F-4 Phantoms because they had stock footage, but still that bit with the MiGs roaring over the ice caps, that was some real eye candy. And I heard it was one of Howard Hughes' favorite movies, that when he was in one of his nutty phases, eating Hershey bars and using Kleenex boxes as sandals, he kept watching that over and over again. But the special effects with the model subs and everything, a lot of it was done underwater with a real submarine. But the model work, somebody had commented that I think they said they'd seen one of the Hollywood prop models and it was really well done. And a true hats off, especially because in 1969 it was probably hard to get good pictures of a MiG-21, but I'm sure they got them somewhere. Another movie that had particularly bad model work, but was a great movie, one of my favorites, was the B-52 in Dr. Strangelove. And you guys are probably familiar with the whole story behind the B-52 cockpit, and I think one of y'all posted in some detail about that. And the story that I heard was that Kubrick had a friend, or actually I think some of the production people had friends who were Air Force officers in England, and they managed to get a manual, which would have been a classified document back then, to some of Kubrick's people and let them look at some pictures, not make copies or anything, but just look at it so they could. That's why the B-52 cockpit looked so well. And I heard it was based partly on a B-29. I don't know, but you never know whether these stories are apocryphal. But apparently there was some concern that the cockpit was too accurate. It might cause some heat from the Pentagon, and allegedly did. But the external shots, as good as the internal shots were, the external shots were kind of bad. By the way, you notice that the shadow footage is underneath the model is that it's composited over as B-17 shadow. And I thought, because it was a dark comedy, I thought it was something done as a gag. I didn't realize, no, they actually used a B-17 to go fly out there and get all that footage. So I was like, okay, I did not realize that they had done that until I read an article on it. The other one movie franchise that still uses miniatures today, and in fact they do, is the James Bond series. They always have used miniatures, and to their credit, they've mastered it. And you look at some of these James Bond miniatures, they are outstanding. And they use a lot of them. When GoldenEye came out, I, of course, had no idea the helicopter was radio control. I'm sure it was mixed with some real footage of the helicopter. But what I was when I saw the movie, I went, when the MiG-29s took off, I was like, hey, I know those MiGs are not real MiGs, but that really looked good. The whole crash scene and everything with them. That was up on par with the with that Stuka crashing into the radar building in the Battle of Britain, which was just this huge model and miniature work for a scene that lasted a couple of seconds. And that's what always amazes me about some of this, so much work for a scene that only lasts a few seconds. Which is understandable why they'd want to use kit models, just off-the-shelf kit models when they'll suffice, because so much goes into it. But the other one, of course, you can't mention, you know, great Hollywood model work, you know, just repeatedly without talking about Jerry Anderson. And my personal favorite was UFO series, you know, which, by the way, and I'm going to put a link below to this. Somebody did a very short animation showing what the ships were originally supposed to look like. I mean, I touched on this yesterday. Starship Enterprise was more or less initially like kind of like a glorified flying saucer. Not the beautiful Starship we know today that Matt Jeffries and them put together, that has probably the single most iconic Hollywood model of all time. And the UFO Interceptor looking kind of like a glorified Gemini capsule more than what it, and some other stuff. Then there's this is what Fireball XL5 was apparently originally concepted to look like. I didn't get that far off. And UFO, I did write my little notes here because I can't remember names. Apparently the two guys who were behind, I don't know if they actually built them or just were the concept guys, but Derek Meddings and I think that's Mike Trim. And they didn't label the photograph, which I hopefully I'm going to put right here, but I believe that's them right there. I could be wrong on that. If I am, let me know. But of course, when Hollywood makes kit models of this stuff, then, you know, they get a little bit of the, I mean, I can only imagine if you're working in Hollywood and what it must feel like if you're working in Hollywood and you design a machine, a miniature that gets on camera. You look at some of these UFO miniatures, some of them, you know, they built this thing and it only appears on camera one time. Well, that's a lot of work. But let's say you're the guy that designs or builds them all, either one, perfectly, you know, whatever. And then all of a sudden, you're walking through a hobby shop one day and there's a model of what you created from your fertile mind. And I assume these things are done by teams. I doubt one person envisions it and builds it, but I'm sure there are cases where that's taking place. But then you look and go, you know, I designed that ship, or I built that model. It's on, you know, and that's got to be a very pleasing experience. And now, I think the question for today, yesterday I was like, what's your favorite Hollywood model? And I'm not sure I have a favorite. Just to throw something out there, I'm going to go with the Starship Enterprise, the original series, which I've seen in the Smithsonian, both before and after they modified it. I could not believe they altered it. I mean, this is the Smithsonian, for God's sakes. You're supposed to protect artifacts. So for those who don't know, it's been restored twice because it just had a recent restoration. Now, I went back there in the 80s and saw it just as it appeared on television. And yes, all the detail was on one side. They detailed the other side, but not as much because that's where the cables and everything went in. But it was hanging from the ceiling. And I have some old snapshots if I can dig them up. But it's just, you know, it was right. It was just the way it was in the studio. Most of the windows were just painted on. Well, then it had to go for restoration because the thing's made of wood and it was starting to, I don't know what it was starting to do, but apparently it needed some help. And it went to the restoration shop, and God bless those guys, they're experts. But then I saw it after it was in the restoration shop, and they cleaned it up. They'd also weathered it. I think they cut out some windows, and I don't know if those were windows that were original to that were cut out, because I don't remember any of them being cut out. But I don't know. Maybe they plugged them the first time they went in there. All I know is it was noticeably different. They'd added detail to it. I'm like, this is an artifact. You're not supposed. What do you? And I'm sure these people don't do anything without discussions, and so. But I don't know what the rationale was, but they, and now it's in for third restoration. I haven't seen it since it's done that, but or second restoration. I did see some pictures online. It looked like the innards did need some attention. But anyway, I'm just gonna say that's my favorite Hollywood prop model, just because there's so many of them I love. But that's just to have something to put out there. But that's not my question for the day. That was yesterday. Today is, what is your favorite kit model that came from a Hollywood prop model? And it could be something like James Bond's Aston Martin. I mean, if that's your favorite, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be something. And it can be something that's just a regular thing that a kit model is made of, or it can be something that was made just as a weird prop for Hollywood. Just what is your favorite kit from a Hollywood prop model? And yeah, you get me talking Hollywood, and man, I could prattle on all day and that and models. So that's what I have for this morning. Hope you guys are going to have a great model building day. I did hear back from the guys at Atlantis. Hopefully this week I'll get to have a Zoom interview with the guys at Atlantis, and we can get a little information, a little insight into what goes on in the mysterious world of model making companies. And gosh, so many things to do. Before long, I'm going to have to start studying to go back to work, so that's going to eat up a lot of time. I got to get this stagecoach finished. I'm doing that, that 2.5 foot stagecoach for a friend of mine, and some folks did. If I didn't say, some folks did. Yeah, I told you. Yeah, some folks contacted me with the instructions. Some of you guys emailed me some stuff, so I got at least enough to get started. And when that when the instruction booklet shows up, I should have everything I need. But I want to. There were a few little pieces missing, mostly the luggage, but I was able to fabricate that. And guys, I want to thank you once again just for making all this worth doing. And remember, this isn't my channel, this is our channel. Because without you, I'd just be sitting here talking to myself. Not that I'm above that. See you later.